Armas nucleares são usadas com frequência nas guerras contemporâneas.
E além de causarem morte e destruição em massa, para os que sobrevivem, elas representam um risco de contaminação pela radioatividade.
Hoje você vai conhecer histórias de pessoas que foram contaminadas pelo contato com essas armas, no documentário Cobaias Nucleares.
We were just on an open hillside facing ground zero, and just before the shot was dropped from an airplane, they told us to turn around and put your hands behind your head, put your knees up, and put your head between your knees. And that we did, and you could just feel like a blowtorch going across the back of your neck when the blast went off.
We got out of our trenches and foxholes and had a simulated attack on ground zero. When I got out of my foxhole, the sandbags were burning, and the sand was spun to glass like ice. No, I didn't have any worries whatsoever. When you're 22, heck, you think you're so I didn't think a thing about it till it got to 5. And then I started, like I said, crouching down.
Most people talk about it, and it's just something that happened. And unless you talk to some of the other fellas that's been on through a shot or something like that really knows what's happened, I don't think the outside world realizes what it really is.
I was drafted into the Army in 1951, January of 1951, and I went down to the Nevada desert in October of 1951 to participate in the Buster Jangle series of nuclear tests. Up until that time, nuclear weapons had been delivered with airplanes, and the war in Korea was going on, and so they had anticipated the use of smaller nuclear weapons, that is, tactical nuclear weapons, ones that could be delivered by artillery shell, for example. And they wanted to know whether soldiers would be able to continue fighting under that kind of situation. They had a whole scenario written down. The Russians had invaded and come ashore in either Northern California, or Oregon, or Washington, and were driving south and east, and it was just all of the games that the Pentagon plays, or that they love to play. I was a mechanic and driver in A Company of the 231st Combat Engineer Battalion, which was the organization responsible for building the animal pens and retrieving the demolished and destroyed equipment at the test site, and preparing the test site for the various tests. the men were brought up from Camp Desert Rock, put in the trenches, and told to turn around. And when the bomb went off, they were told to turn back around to watch, or to observe the mushroom cloud as it went up into the air. And then they were brought out of the trenches and marched towards ground zero. We were stationed where we could hear the countdown, and so we'd fall out early in the morning and the sun would be coming up, and we'd be waiting to see if we could see the airplane or to hear the airplane as it came over to see if we could see this thing while it was falling. And we were told to turn our backs because we didn't have glasses or any protective eye gear, and the countdown would begin, and then when the explosion went off, the entire desert lit up like brighter than daylight, and everything stood out in bright relief. You know, the yucca plants and the sagebrush and those kinds of things were just so vivid. And it was, if you've been to the test site and you know where Yucca Flat is, it's kind of a large basin, and this whole basin just lit up with light. It was an awe-inspiring event. When I left the test site, I knew that as human beings, we had the ability to destroy ourselves. And I've been thinking about that ever since 1951. And, you know, if saner heads don't prevail, we're going to do it, seems to me.
I didn't volunteer to go out and be a guinea pig. Originally, they said they picked out some in each company that was there. They said, well, you're due for orientation March 16th at 2 o'clock. You're going to witness atomic explosion. They made me sign a paper. I guess it was some kind of release, but if I, you know, they couldn't make you go, but if you didn't go, you could be court-martialed. So I signed it and went. We went to what they had, the canteen tent, and there was a captain and colonel giving us a rundown a little bit what was going to happen. He said, in no way would we put you in harm's way. He said, so they asked, you know, how much radiation we're going to get. He said, oh, it'd be probably a little less than a regular chest x-ray. I mean, everybody looked around and kind of, you know, snickered. We knew better than that. But anyway, that morning of the 17th, we got in buses and trucks. It was still dark. This was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and we went about 25 miles to the forward area. And I think the blast was detonated at 5:20, and it was still dark. It was an open shot, and we were 2,500 yards from ground zero in a foxhole with no protective gear whatsoever. They told us to crouch down and keep our eyes closed and put our hands over our eyes. But when the blast went off, it was, you know, brighter than day. And I peeked a little bit, and I could see the bones in my hand. And then the shock wave went over us, and then it hit off of a mountain, and the back blast was worse than the original shock wave. But then the helicopters went over and we started a simulated attack on ground zero. And halfway there, my feet were getting hot. And I looked down at my combat boots, and the half soles were, curled up, starting to peel off. It was that hot. They built 2 brick houses, and they had new cars set around at different intervals. They had sheep and pigs and cattle. And we got within probably 200 yards from the crater of the initial blast. This was a tower shot. And I looked over, and I couldn't see anything left of those houses. I looked around, and there was some sheep, but their wool was on fire, and there was some pigs running around squealing. And I could see over on my right, a pig just fell over dead. They had planted trees and had cars, and they had mannequins, sitting in the windows, but there was nothing left. Then we marched back to buses and trucks to go back to camp. They did have a Geiger counter. All they did was dust us off and run the Geiger count over. I had a film badge that time and a film badge the second time, but 8 times in the forward area, I didn't have a film badge. My job was, I was on a detail to take tanks and equipment out and put them in designated spots for a shot. Then after the shot, we would go out and drag them back to Camp Mercury for the scientists to evaluate, how much damage and at what interval and how much radiation there was. But like I said, we didn't have any protective equipment. All we had was what a combat infantryman would have in the field. Fatigues, a steel pot, an M1 rifle, and the combat boots. And that was all we had. Walter Cronkite was there to that shot, and I'd seen him on TV not too long ago describing this shot. But anyway, they were 8 miles, what they call Nob Hill, because that's where all the newsmen was, 8 miles back, and they had big goggles on. We didn't have nothing, not a thing. Well, I've had lung problems, I've had bleeding stomach, arthritis, gallbladder trouble, urinary tract trouble. I've had heart problems and heart attacks. But right after that blast, when I was a guinea pig, the next day I had bleeding gums. And I lost 2 weeks after that, my teeth started getting loose. In fact, I reached in there and just one just fell out. And I lost 7 teeth, and I had terrific stomach problems, and then I started hemorrhaging. I had to have stomach surgery. They said it was ulcers, but I know I didn't have any trouble before.
They were bringing these ships from all around, put in the lagoon down there at Bikini to test Able and Baker on. The original 3 was the test bomb down at White Sands, and then Hiroshima, and Nagasaki, and the 4 and 5 were the 2 bikini bombs. The Nevada was the target ship, and Nevada laid in the center of the target ships. We laid over on the port quarter. Able exploded, I don't know, 150 yards, something like that, from the Sakawa, not over the battleship, the target ship. It drove that thing together like an accordion. The guys that were in there told me, and watched it sink. It took about 25 hours to sink it. I can't remember how many hours after that. Then we went back into the lagoon and proceeded to do what a seagoing tug does, you know. We hauled contaminated stuff out to, I believe, the 40,000 fathom mark and dropped it. This is a seagoing tug now, the ATA 124. And we done that up until it come time for Baker. Then when they got all set up for Baker, then we went out, and all the seagoing tugs, you steam around all night in concentric circles until the actual bomb. Now that was the scariest thing I ever saw in my life, because when that Baker exploded and that big mushroom of water and stuff went up in the air, it looked to me, facing it, like it was from here to that door. And I thought that big wall of water was going to come right out and swamp us, and that's from 10 miles away. Well, at that time, it was quite an interesting deal, because we didn't know there was anything down the road and stuff. We didn't know about the so-called radioactivity and that stuff, you know, that you could get from nuclear stuff. They talk about these badges and stuff that the people wore. I never saw one. I don't know what they looked like. Like I say, with Baker, it just scared the hell out of me. You know, was seeing that big wall of water, but then after it settled down and we steamed back in there, didn't think anything of it.
I was a deckhand on board the USS Renville APA 227 at Operation Hardtack 1. We were 6 miles from ground zero on surface tests, underwater tests, aerial tests, and what have you. There was one ship, as like a destroyer or destroyer escort, that was 3 of them in a row. One was 1 mile from the point of detonation. The next one was 2 miles, and the next one was 3 miles from the point of detonation. Okay? Now, when this did go off, we went through the procedure of our backs turned to it and hands over our eyes, and there was no other protection. So then we noticed that the first ship that was 1 mile away just left the water. It left it. You could see the horizon underneath the fantail as it went up. It went past vertical, and then it came down, and that's all we've seen of it. The next one went on up, not quite vertical, which was 2 miles away, and it dropped down, and it kind of bobbed around a little bit, to my recollection, like that, and it just went right on down. And the third one, after the blast was over with, this ship was the only one that was floating. The third one was supposed to be 3 miles away from point of detonation. I was at this one test that we had that I was on the trainer seat for the 5-inch cannon that we had on the fantail, and I was turned away from it and with our back to the detonation, and with our hands over our eyes, as we were told it's the only protection we had. And we were at the point of detonation. Well, it was a matter of something like 7.5 seconds or something like that. It was all in that ballpark. And then it hit, and it hit awful hard. And it knocked me clear out of the trainer seat down onto the turret. And I rolled off of that down onto the deck and skidded me up a little bit, but it wasn't bad. I was a sailor. I jumped up and shook it off. I believe that it was the underwater test that broke the seam in the hull of the ship, and I didn't get to see that particular detonation, but I did feel the consequences of it, in which at the point of detonation, well, it threw me over the two after steering columns. It threw me clear over there. I lost my earphones, and I had no control of myself at all. And then someone said, well, there it is right over there, just starting out with just a little bit of a mound. And if you look close enough, at the right place at the right time, you would see it. And then it started picking up, building up. The mound started getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then all at once, that mound would kind of leave the water. And then it would have a huge, big shaft come up from that, just pulling everything up from the bottom. And then it would go up and up and up and up and up. But I have never seen anything so more beautiful in my life as so many of the different oranges, the yellows, the purples, the greens, the colors, all in that whole thing. It was there. And I don't know, I thought to myself afterwards, I said, I wonder if Michelangelo could paint such a picture. But it was the most deadly thing that I or anybody else on board that ship had ever witnessed in their lives.
I was in the Navy during Operation Ivy. Our ship was assigned to escort duty when the ship carrying the atomic weapon came out from the West Coast. And we picked it up at Pearl Harbor and escorted it to Eniwetok, and then performed security patrols around the Eniwetok area. We were patrolling the lagoon and the entrances to the lagoon for that, for the possibility of foreign vessels, foreign submarines, anything that might be looking over our shoulders when we were looking at the bomb. There were 4 ships in our squadron. We were the primary anti-submarine, one of the primary anti-submarine vessels. And we did have what we thought was an intruder. At one time they did track it for some time, but they never were able to resolve actually what it was, whether it was a whale or something else. And we did go to general quarters because we were prepared to attack if necessary, if we couldn't bring it to the surface in a peaceful manner, because that was part of our duties. Everybody was creating these ideas that hydrogen is supposed to be one of the most stable elements in the world, type of thing. And he says, well, if they can make this thing go off, what's going to keep the rest of the world from going off at the same time? And we found out that it didn't happen, fortunately, because we were awful close to it if they were going to blow up the whole world.
was a crew member on an RB-36. It was a reconnaissance bomber version of the B-36. Instead of having 4 bomb bays, it had 2. And the forward bomb bay was converted to a photo department. We were airborne for, well, the entire trip, about 30 hours. And we started very early in the previous evening or so, and went eastward as far as Texas. And we're measuring winds aloft from Texas all the way into Nevada. And then we rendezvoused probably western New Mexico, or western Arizona, or New Mexico in that corner somewhere, and then ran on the site for the drop in Nevada. You'd line up on a bomber run, just like you're running on a target. You'd have a series of checkpoints, and they would take measurements as far as drift and things like that to make sure you put the bomb where it was supposed to be. The 10 B-36s were deployed, 2 groups of 5 in what we referred to as a bomber stream, 5 airplanes in a row on each side, 500 foot above each other, and I was in the left rear position at 43,500 feet. And the B-50 came up from Walker or Kirtland, or one of the bases in the southwest there, and he had the atom bomb on board. We made a dummy run and came around, all 11 of us, and then back and made a final run. Then he dropped a bomb on that run. We were all, at least in the command part of the intercom system on the airplane, could listen to other aircraft, and including the guy on the B-50 dropping the bomb. And he identified himself as the Playboy. That was his code name. And to tell us that he was going to run where he's going to drop the bomb, he identified it as, I'm the Playboy, and I'm on the graveyard run. And this time, they were going to drop the bomb. And like it happened a couple minutes ago, I remember him saying, I'm the Playboy on the graveyard run, 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Son of a bitch! The bomb didn't go out of the airplane. I don't know, it got hung up mechanically or some damn thing. And, of course, we all looked at one another, and, like, it's like somebody turned all the engines off. Like, we were just in complete suspension, like, what was going to happen? Well, he pulled it, and it went manually, I guess like a salvo. Obviously, didn't go where it was supposed to go. Instead of blowing up like 1,000 or 1,200 feet, it blew up quite a few thousand feet above that. So we were a little closer to it than they had counted on. I got to the blister, and I looked down, and the bomb was cloudless in its initial formation. It looked like a giant orange basketball. It kept getting bigger and bigger. Then the clouds started to go up from it. Bounced twice, of course. When the bomb blew up, we got the air wave, initially right from the blast. And then the second blast, when the reflection of the wave when it hit the ground and came back up again. Bounced the airplane a second time. As the last airplane in the run, in a reconnaissance model with the cameras and all the other gear on board, we were told that the cloud would be about 40,000, 29 as we went by, and 40 coming back. After we made the big U-turn and headed back for it, the cloud obviously was over 60,000 feet then and going up. My aircraft commander made a decision for which I'm eternally grateful. I'm not going through that cloud. So we made a big sweeping flight around it, but not through it. After we got back to Fairchild, and they hosed all the airplanes down, and it took us away. and checked us all over and took the pocket dosimeters and all the bang meter, all that crap out of the airplane. They hosed all the airplanes down on another part of the field. But then we read in the paper how successful the test was. I've always felt to myself, it wasn't quite that successful.
Camp Desert Rock, when we first got there, was just a spot in the sand. And we went to the, I remember we went to the far end of the road, and that's where we set up our tents and everything and our motor pool. And as other outfits came in, they filled in from where we were at up towards Mercury Junction, different companies. And it was just rows of tents. And that was it. It was strictly all just Army troops. There wasn't a lot to do out there. Our outfit was pretty lucky. We got to go on road patrol when your name came up, and we patrolled the highways from Desert Rock to the railhead at Las Vegas with our wreckers and our little trucks and toolboxes and everything, and any military stragglers along the road or breakdowns, why we'd stop, fix them if we couldn't, well, we would tow them in. First shot that I remember, we were just on an open hillside facing ground zero, and just before the shot was dropped from an airplane, they told us to turn around and put your hands behind your head, put your knees up, you know, and put your head between your knees. And that we did, and you could just feel like a blowtorch going across the back of your neck when the blast went off. And then you could feel the pressure hit you. I remember one guy that was in our outfit, he got excited or something, and he jumped up just before the blast hit, and it just knocked him flat. After the heat wave went by and then the blast and the noise and everything, then we could turn around. They said we could turn around, and I remember seeing the mushroom cloud then. This huge, big mushroom cloud that was beautiful, really, all colors. It was boiling from the outside, you know, up and around and back in the bottom, and going up and up and up, and a big ice cap formed clear over the top of it. You would set an aircraft at a tank or something so many yards from ground zero or so many degrees, you know, it was all pretty well documented. And afterwards, why, they would go back and take what measurements they could, but most of the time it was too hot to get back in there. One airplane was turned, well, it was facing the blast, and afterwards it was set in the right angles. It had been turned around halfway, a big bomber. And I think one of the most unusual sights that we saw was a tank. I think it was Uncle shot, and it was, when we went out to look at it, the turret had been fused right to the bottom of the tank from the blast and the heat. It was just like one piece of metal instead of a turning turret. To come back one time, I had two captains with me, and in a Jeep, and we went up to look at a tank and a command car, and the Geiger counter went off to scale, and I told them we had to leave, and they didn't want to. They wanted to go farther, and I wouldn't go. Anyway, I got burnt out when I came back out through decon station. I was burnt out, and they took my Geiger counter, my film badge, and my dosimeter away from me for 3 days. Wouldn't let me go back in because I was burnt out.
So I was on a DER, which is a destroyer escort radar picket ship. And so we were like the secret ships, like the Pueblo that was captured by Korea. We had dual missions, but most of it was weather. And we'd send up weather balloons and track them. And out there also in North Pacific when we were there was for, in case an airplane went down, as rescue. In '62, shortly after I was aboard that vessel, we were told we were going to participate in this Operation Dominic in the Pacific Joint Task Force 8, is what it was called. The one that I did see, the one that was above us was enough to knock out the communications and light up the islands of Hawaii. We were directly underneath. They told us, you know, you're not taking any radiation, we won't have it. But we did go into, right after the explosion, everybody went inside and we washed down the vessel. They had piping all around each level with nozzles. And the superstructure and the bridge decks and even up on top of the fly bridge had ways to, nozzles to actually, using salt water, pumping salt water and washing it down. Well, I was 18 years old, so to me, or 19, I was 18, just turned 19, I guess. And so to me, it was exciting. I wanted to participate. I joined the Navy. I wasn't drafted. I wanted to participate in everything. So everything I did was rather exciting. Of course, when you're there and you don't have family or anything else, you have a whole different outlook than the guys that had families. I know there was a lot of apprehension among my shipmates that had families back in Hawaii. It's just fear of the unknown, of what might happen, you know, if something went wrong, or, you know, I think that's part of it. Even after it happened, then there was probably more apprehension after it happened than before. How much radiation are we going to take? How, you know, what's this going to do to us, you know? Is this wash down on the ship going to work? How long does that radiation stay in the air? A lot of questions that we never did get answered. I'd seen explosions on film in Nevada. And so when you think about it and the size of the hydrogen bomb compared to an atom bomb, you know, we sensed it. We knew that this was something that was unique, something that had never been done before. An explosion that high and that big. So yeah, there was a real sense of power, that of the destruction capabilities of what it could do.
I like to put it like this. The blockbusters in World War II dropping on London. If a blockbuster dropped and you still could get up and walk away, then you had nothing to worry about. But with the atomic bomb, the nuclear bomb and that, you might be able to walk away, but it'll probably get you down the road.
We never heard those code words. That's what surprises me on a lot of things. That, you know, and I didn't realize that there were so many tests, so many shots on each test. That really surprised me when I look back at it or get the paperwork on them. I didn't realize there was that many shots.
Once we had ionizing radiation in our bodies, we were contaminated for life. And you can take that to the bank. We were contaminated for life. My children, 3 of my children were born after the tests, And then we talk. One later on in years, her teenage years, she had a hole in her heart. The next one come up behind her. She had bad valves in her heart. And the last one is borderline retardation.
I often think about it in our motor pool. You know, all of those vehicles had been out there on these tests, and we come back in, and we would have to repair them and crawl around under them, and all of that sand was just like powder under them. And I wonder about some of those guys afterwards.
And the thing that really bothered me was that when I had my children seemed like they picked up what I had. I had a couple of crippled children. One of them's dead. One of them, he's on Social Security. He's crippled, and it just, my daughter, she broke out with these rashes around her throat and on her back, and the little knots like I got, and loss of teeth was another thing. The gums bleeding a lot. I've had a lot of dental problems.
I'm very proud to have been a sailor. I have been proud to serve my country in any way. But I don't understand why they would subject us to such long-term devastation. Physically, mentally, and for what I've done and what it's done to my mind, in my mind, from those tests, what I have done to my children.
You know, I've talked about it a little bit to different people, and they kind of shrug it off, think you're making up a story. Our government wouldn't do that. That's what a lot of them, the attitude that they give to you, that they just wouldn't do that.